Do your cuttings just rot away or never root? Do you struggle with taking cuttings and growing plants from them? Do they start turning pale and start losing leaves? Well, welcome to Have a Whole Lot of Nature, and we will show you exactly how to root your cuttings without fail. See, there are a lot of factors that affect your cuttings: the propagation method, the environment you grow them in, the kind of plant you want to propagate, and so on. So let's get right into the best ways you can root your cuttings. Number 1. Make sure you choose a healthy stem with big leaves. If the cutting is healthy, it can absorb more nutrients and light. It will promote new growth and root faster. It will also be more resilient to root rot and pests. Also, make sure you use a sterile cutter. This will prevent cuttings from developing mold. So, basically speaking, if the foundation of your cutting is strong, the building also is going to be strong, right? So, make sure you pick a good stem or good leaf while taking your cuttings. Point number 2: humidity. This is one of the most important factors that affect your cuttings. Cuttings need humidity to root, not only in the medium but in their environment too. Humidity is very vital for a plant to root faster. There are many ways to increase humidity around your plant. The easiest way you could think of is to use a mister. Spraying it regularly can, help it out a lot. But depending on the plant, you might even have to mist it like 2 to 3 times a day, which can get quite hectic. This sometimes can, also overwater your medium and increase the chances of root rot. The cheapest way is to place a plastic bag or a see-through container over the pot you're growing your cuttings in. This will ensure the moisture and humidity to stay around the plant, promoting the growth of roots. This method also saves a lot of water because it doesn't let the humidity and moisture escape easily. But the only con is when you have to rewater, you'll have to go through the hassle of opening up the plastic bag and closing it down, so that can get quite hectic sometimes. Now, coming to my favorite way to increase humidity for your cuttings is to use a big plastic box like this, which can easily be found online or in your local supermarket. Now, keep in mind, we're going to be making like a terrarium kind of enclosure in this. You can cultivate moss, you can propagate any kind of cutting, you name it. You can do whatever you want in this. So the first step is to create a false bottom. Here I'm using cinder. It's like a rock, porous rock, which is very inexpensive and can be found in a lot of places where I'm from. You can use clay pellets, you can use tiny pebbles, and you can use even stones you can acquire from your garden. Make sure you wash them out and make sure there's no bacteria remaining in this. Now, it doesn't depend what size you use, it can be of multiple sizes, but make sure it doesn't go too big or too small. It has to be kinda even. So, as you can see, I'm spreading it out here. Make sure you cover the bottom of the container with the false bottom, that's really important. Now, after evenly distributing it, I'm going to be adding a little bit of activated charcoal. This will act like a filter for your whole ecosystem. It's quite important. You can use industry grade charcoal, but I'm using activated charcoal here because it's quite inexpensive. You can find it off of Amazon, links in the description for that. Don't add too much, a tiny bit can go a long ways. Now that you've added your charcoal, you'll need to create a medium that divides this false bottom from the substrate. This is quite important because it doesn't allow the roots to pass through this layer and stay in the false bottom. That can lead to root rot. There's a lot of things you can use as the dividing medium. You can either use a plastic mesh or like a metallic mesh, but I like using sphagnum moss as it has a lot of properties that help in this kind of ecosystem. It has moisture retaining properties, which is really good for the substrate. So you can see here I am dividing the sphagnum moss up and placing it across the false bottom. Make sure it's not really thick. I'm gonna create like an even and thin layer of this. Now that the sphagnum moss layer is complete, it's time to add a substrate. Now you can make this as thick as you want and thin as you need. I'll be adding moss to this box, so I'm not going to make it really thick. If you want a detailed video on how I make my substrate mix, please let me know in the comments. Just to give you a brief idea of what I use, I've used a little bit of cocoa peat, a little bit of worm castings, a little bit of perlite, bone chips, and some cocoa coir. So whatever substrate you guys use, make sure it has well draining properties and a little bit of moisture retaining properties too. Depending on what propagations I would put in the box, I would make it more well draining or more moisture retaining. So just keep that in mind when you're making this propagation box. Now all you'll have to do is just add a little bit of water or mist it down to just settle it down in the box, and then you can start adding your cuttings or your moss. You don't regularly need to mist this. It'll be like once in a month or so. Just make sure you don't over mist it. And that's probably it. That's how you'd make a perfect propagation box, and like this will for sure help you to root your cuttings really well. Now, if you don't want to go out of your way and purchase a huge plastic box, you can always use plastic containers. Plastic containers like these, from in which you'll get vegetables from the grocery stores, or any kind of jar that you might purchase, a pickle jar, any kind of enclosure you can always use for this method. So it's always inexpensive and reusable. So make sure to give it a try, guys. And as you can see, my ferns are propagating very well here. Now, coming to propagating in water, there are a lot of advantages to grow cuttings in water. It is the easiest. All you have to do is repurpose a glass bottle and pop a cutting in there. In addition to being so easy, it also looks very cute. Also, most cuttings prefer lower light and higher humidity, so indoors is the best for propagating in water. Now, when it comes to changing the water, you changing it twice a week will ensure oxygen to the roots and help it grow properly. But the more often you change the water, the better it is for the cuttings. Now, coming to the aftercare while propagating, make sure you guys keep a good watch on your cuttings from time to time. And when ready to plant or look better off in a glass bottle, make sure you handle the roots with care because they are quite fragile when staying in water. Now, when you've planted the cutting in soil, make sure you keep the soil moist for a longer time until they shoot out new leaves. Then water when the soil is dry or as per the plant's need. If you have a delicate water propagated sapling, it is best that you slowly introduce soil to the water over a period of 2 to 3 weeks rather than replanting it directly into soil. This will prevent the plant from going into shock. What you'll need to do is introduce a little bit of soil every day or every 2 to 3 days to the water that you've kept the plant in. Once the water is like reduced to around 20%, 10%, then you can replace the whole soil and put it in a new pot. That brings us to the end of the video. I hope you learned a lot about propagation. Thanks for watching and subscribe if you're new. Check out these videos if you're interested in more of such content.